Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, and obviously the 10 billion pound elephant in the room is the verdict, the Banana Republic verdict. Um, your thoughts, unedited?
First of all, what kind of effect this is going to have seems to be pretty split. We've seen polls that show people are now moving away from Trump. We've seen polls showing they're moving towards Trump. I think it's going to be a wash. I think upper middle class are going to say, well, no, he's a convicted felon. We don't want to have anything to do with him. But you're seeing a lot of poorer people, a lot of minorities who have long felt that the justice system was weighed against them, going, wait a minute, he's fighting the man. He's on our side. And so I don't know whether or not it's going to have a huge effect on the election. It did definitely have a huge effect on fundraising. Trump set records in small donor donations immediately following the verdict. And in the days since, his fundraising has gone through the roof. And some of it is big donors, but most of it is small dollar donors. And that has been a point of weakness for the Republicans, that small dollar donor. So this may be a game changer for that.
My view on this is it will be a minor 2 point, 1 point help for Trump. Let me explain. Because the people like, suburbia, they're not going to vote for Trump anyway. It's all bullshit. Okay, so let's get right to the crap, right? The negated community, they'll be voting for Trump like I'll go to the moon. Okay, so that's already baked in. All right, they don't like the guy. They never did. The enthusiasm gap, that's huge. Okay, no one's going to jump to the polls because they hate. They now all of a sudden hate Trump and he's a felon. That ain't gonna happen. It's the base and even the traditional non-base. There's a lot of those contributors were never contributed to a campaign ever. Is it a tsunami? No, it's not. But here's what I believe. I believe this trial is joined at the hip to the debate. I can assure you that. How does that sound? If Trump addresses this in an effective manner, it blows up in Uncle Joe's face. And we talked about the fireman principle. Yeah. It just happened. And also, it's human nature. We saw that in 2016, 2020. That people ask you, you're going to vote for a felon? What are you going to say? Oh, yeah, I'm more psyched about it. No, I would never vote for a felon. We'll see when your house is on fire if that's going to happen. Okay. The winds are against Biden, meaning the tailwinds or the headwinds. OPEC's cutting production, inflation, jobs, less jobs. I think there was the job openings are plummeting. So to put in perspective, with some people, it just reaffirms that they hate the orange man. I think it's not a huge thing. I think it helps. It kicks Trump up a little bit, maybe less than a point, but it definitely does. And I do think, and I like your opinion on this, it is tied to the debate. If it's handled correctly by Trump in the debate, and coupled with that, and if Trump owns that debate, it goes out the window because people say, I can't vote for this guy. The guy's a friggin' he's got Swiss cheese for a brain, which is coming out by his interview in Time magazine, plus a Wall Street Journal report that had insiders who have dealt with Uncle Joe in the past and now currently say it's downright scary. So your thoughts on my little soliloquy?
Yeah, I don't know if it is going to be tied to debate because, quite frankly, Democrats are already starting to be very concerned that they just gave Trump the election. And you're seeing like Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, is so afraid that New York is going to flip red that she is now canceling New York City's congestion pricing. And for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with what congestion pricing is, this is when you have to pay an additional toll just to drive into a city, in this case, Manhattan. Well, Hochul is so afraid that New York is going to flip red, she's canceling that congestion pricing because it's been very contentious. You're seeing
Wait, let
Democrats.
me interject something about that. She has the greatest Trump campaign ad because I saw the video. She talks all the reasons why. Guess what? Every reason is tied to Uncle Joe. How do you like that? And she's not exactly a Mensa candidate.
No, she's not. And you're also seeing blowback against Robert De Niro. The
Oh God.
National Association of Broadcasters pulled their award from him and pulled an invitation to a big gala because they thought he's too divisive now. You've had actors come out saying, "You know what? We're not working with him. He's lost his mind." So
No, he's lost his mind.
you're actually seeing blowback already. I think the only
So
chance that Joe Biden has at this point is to blow away the debate. If he barely makes it through, he's done.
So we agree, Dr. Lopkin, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. Yes, I think if he, well, I actually, how do you like that? I can't agree 100%. I think if he does a ramped up Brandon and gets through it, the game continues. The game continues. Okay, that's all I'm saying. If he and I don't see him getting through that debate. I really don't. I mean, you could say wishful thinking, all that crap. The guy can't even do an interview with Time Magazine. That's like me doing an interview with a weekly reader. What color do you like, Mr. Sherman? I like blue. Oh, I'll kick your ass too.
Well,
Jesus. I
let's
mean,
let's also remember that at this moment, Joe Biden is in France for the
sleeping, by the way.
D-Day celebration. Now, there's a bed on Air Force One. He did not interact with the press on Air Force One. And yet, as soon as he got off the plane, they called a lid on his day. That was it. He could not interact with anyone. He couldn't even handle the plane trip when he could have slept at least part of the time.
Yes. So why do you say that the debates are not tied to the trial? Because I think if he lays an egg and shows that he's completely out of his mind or does not have a mind, either or, as Dan Quayle would say, I think that it blows up the whole bullshit with the trial. That's like gone. And if Trump addresses it and says, listen, there was no crime. The only reason we're here is because you can't even put two sentences together.
Well,
Goodbye. Check, please.
I say the two are not connected because you were saying that if Trump addresses the trial well, then it I don't think Trump has to address the trial at all. I think the only way that Trump loses this debate is if Biden does a phenomenal job. If Biden does even just as good as he did on the State of the Union, it's not going to be enough given all of the information that's coming out on his cognitive dissonance now. So I don't think the
Yes, and
debate
how
is
about
going to have to do with the trial. I think the debate is going to have to do with his mental inadequacies.
well, the real question is the quintessential question. How do you like that word of the day? Is how does he get through the debate? I mean, this is not a bullshit question. I'm asking you a serious question. I don't know how you slept all day. Now, let me just be clear. This is not even like first class on a plane, okay? Which is very comfy, by the way. This is Air Force One. You can sleep like a little baby, okay? In fact, the jet engines might put little Joey to sleep, okay? This guy is inoperable, and let's be honest, given his mental condition, he may not be sleeping. They must say, because it's the international press, there's not the kind of rules that there are in America, blah blah blah. They might just be stowing him away because, my God, what if he was like put in front of the public in Europe? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, I think the only way he's going to get through this debate, he's going to have a minimal schedule for several days before the debate so
No schedule.
that he's good and rested. I believe they're going to have to give him possibly Ritalin or some other drug to get him moving. And in fact, the Trump campaign has said they want him drug tested before the debate.
Oh, he will be on. I think it's
Yeah,
Adderall.
Adderall,
He'll
yeah,
be on something because yeah, but just because you're ramped up doesn't mean you have a cognitive ability. I mean, the State of the Union, yeah. He was fighting Joe, smoking Joe, all that crap, right? He was still incoherent. He looked like a bumbling
he was
idiot. That's
he
why he
was
got no bout.
incoherent and he didn't have to handle any confrontation. All he was doing was talking. There was minimal confrontation from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who herself is a mental midget. But
Yes.
on a debate, it's going to ramp up the stress on him. I don't think he can handle it.
Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, I can 100% agree. We're in 100% agreement because it actually could be to his detriment if he's ramped up on Adderall because, what Fighting Joe or Angry Joe might be exponentially elevated, and that's not good because you want a president to be in control. Don't want to. What if he lunges at Trump? I mean, the guy's got this macho shit. Who knows? That would be must see TV. But his the headwind he has a lot of headwinds because the only thing he really had was the economy. Yes, there was inflation. That's a huge factor. No question about it. But employment was good, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now that's starting and the people are getting further insight in what all these employment numbers are all about. But job openings are plummeting. Companies are pulling back. Some of the job numbers are actually related to either directly or indirectly to illegal employment, okay, from illegals. Um, so that's a real factor too. And plus, the biggest factor, speaking of illegals, only 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, 2020 or 4 years ago, before he came into office in that campaign, 1% of people surveyed said illegal immigration was their most important topic. It ranked number 15, right above electric fences for dogs. Now, 18% say it's their biggest issue. It now ranks number two, Dr. Lopkin. Those are not good headwinds, are they?
No, those are not good numbers for Biden. And it's very interesting who is saying immigration has become more important because it's not the white collar, gated community folks. They're all in favor of illegal immigration because
They don't give a shit.
they want the maid that they can pay $1 a day. They want the
Plus, it
gardener
has no impact.
right, they want the gardener that they're not going to be have to pay minimum wage to. But the groups that are really affected are lower income, are minorities, because we've seen the parks where their kids play have been overrun by tent cities. The schools that their kids go to have been used to house illegal immigrants. The benefits that they need to get by, they're being cut because these cities don't have the budget for them anymore because they're paying all this money to illegal immigrants. So it is literally Joe Workpail that is suffering from illegal immigration. And they're the ones that are saying, no, this is important. Something needs to be done. And clearly, Biden is worried about it because he just signed his executive order, which is a bad joke because it says Only 1,500 illegal immigrants a day can come into the country, not at the checkpoint. They can cross into the country illegally, but more than 1,500, we're going to stop processing them, which basically means they'll stay in Mexico and try again the next day. He's not
It's like
doing
saying I quit. I
he's
know
not
that it's
doing
not doing a
anything.
thing. It's like saying I quit cigarettes after my second pack a day. Yes, that's a really
Right.
good idea. Yes, it is.
Exactly.
Uh, no doubt about that. But I guess when you look at all that, it doesn't it doesn't completely bode well. But does him saying Trump the felon any weight to that? Donald
I do,
Trump, the convicted felon.
I honestly don't think that that's going to have much of an appeal or an impact, because let's face it, they're going to hammer this. They're going to say it again and again and again. Well, we're still 5 months away. I give it 2 months before that starts going in one ear and out the other for the American people. They're going to be like, all right, yeah, we've heard that already. You're calling him a convicted felon. We get it. And
I
by
think
the
it's
t-
less than that.
by the
And the
time
reason
the
why, just real quick, go ahead. The reason why I think it's a real big mistake, this on the whole stack of mistakes, him and his administration, because it indirectly ties him to it. Okay, a statesman, a someone with a brain, someone with any kind of moral compass would just steer away. It's none of my business. Blah blah blah. But when he says convicted felon, it obviously suggests that he had something to do with orchestrating this whole charade. Am I not correct?
It does. And that was also shown by his little, as you referred to it, the smile heard round the world.
Yes, the
That
Cheshire
little,
cat.
yes, that little smirk that he gave when a reporter asked him if he was behind these prosecutions. Now, I also think this is going to be a problem for Joe Biden, though, because let's face it, whenever he's going to say, oh, he's a convicted felon, his opponents are going to go, what's going on with your son, Hunter?
Yeah, let's talk about that though. House Oversight Committee. You can shed a lot of light on that. Again, Uncle Joe just can't. This it just doesn't work. It's like Obama said, never underestimate the ability for him to f things up. But with that, because I think you have a great point on that, it's not going to. The window of opportunity for him to say convicted felon isn't really all that large, is it? Considering also given the House Oversight Committee's activity, correct?
Yes, earlier today, the House Oversight Committee recommended to the Justice Department that Hunter and James Biden be prosecuted for making false statements to Congress. They've stated that they actually have the evidence that money from foreign powers was deposited in Joe Biden's account. So they are moving forward. Now, I don't think the Justice Department is going to act on this because let's face it, the Justice Department is run by Joe Biden. So I don't think anything's going to come of it. But when he's calling Trump a convicted felon, at the same time, his Justice Department is protecting Hunter. And let's make no mistake here, the Justice Department is protecting Hunter Biden. Even though they are prosecuting him now, they're prosecuting him because a judge threw out the sweetheart plea deal that they teed up for him. They've also given this prosecution going forward in Hunter in the Biden's backyard. So
With
everybody,
Jill there.
right, everybody in the area knows Joe Biden. They're trying to, push this as, oh, this is your neighbors. These folks are favorable to Joe Biden as the New York trial was stacked against Donald Trump. So, and even with that, I have heard pundits say that the defense's actual strategy is to win this on appeal because they don't think there's a chance that Hunter Biden is not going to be found guilty.
Oh well, huh? Isn't that interesting? But isn't it also interesting? And talk about the corruption in the Biden family. That was a leak or an investigation that we had the fake names um,
The
or
alias,
that
the
Joe was
email,
using
yes, the
aliases,
email
email
aliases.
alias. There's like five more. Um, Dan Bongino said, "Well, when there's aliases, there's a crime. Why would you not have that, genius? Hello."
Right. Obviously, Joe Biden was trying to hide his activities. He was trying to hide that he was involved with this. Well, why would you hide something if it's completely above board? You know, Trump never hid that had Stormy Daniels sign an NDA. Why? Because there's nothing illegal about having people sign an NDA. It's done all the time. So, why was Joe Biden trying to hide his activity? Well, obviously, because at the very least, there was a conflict of interest and quite possibly criminal activity.
Well, I don't think there's any criminal activity because I think Uncle Joe was a Mensa candidate at investing, and he took $150,000 average salary over the years and turned it into three houses on the Delaware shore. I think because he's a genius in investing.
Well,
There was no corruption.
clearly that genius has failed him because in his latest financial statements, Joe Biden is in severe debt now.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, don't you just feel so
Really? The
bad
boy
for
genius?
him? Yes.
Oh, darn.
So,
All right.
once all it's amazing how once all of these criminal acts and all of this activity came to light, suddenly Joe Biden doesn't have income anymore other than his salary as president.
When your illegal payments dry up, shit hits the fan, doesn't it, Dr. Eric E.
That's
Lobkin?
it.
Yes, it does. So we have that case. And speaking of the world of politics, J.D. Vance, and I even researched it in terms of Vegas odds, is soaring as the favorite for Trump's VP. Your thoughts, Dr. Lobkin?
Yeah, I don't put a lot of money on Vegas odds.
Oh, I
And
got it, but
any
there's other
yeah,
editorials.
anybody who knows anything about Vegas odds knows the odds is always favors the house. But JD Vance is a possibility. I have actually heard other names rising to the top as well.
Go
One
ahead,
of
tell us.
one of which is actually and I've seen this pushed a number of places is Elise Stefanik. And I
From
find
New
that,
York.
yes, I find that very interesting because one, yes, she's from New York, so she could actually help him flip New York, which would be fascinating if it could happen. Two, she was a standout going after the university presidents about why they didn't protect the Jews on their campuses and why they refused to say that anti Semitism was a violation of their policies. So she could swing a good part of the Jewish vote. And also, as a woman, she is perfectly positioned to counter Kamala Harris yelling about abortion.
You
So
know
I,
something, Dr. Lobman, hold on. I think that is an excellent insight because I've seen what she did with the hearings on the morons from the Ivy League, but I also seen her electrocute one of the liberal morning Sunday idiots, right? It
yes,
was man against boy, destroyed her. So
yes,
she's good.
she is incredibly intelligent. She can hold her own with any reporter. So again, I don't know, they're going to be yelling different names from now until Trump actually says who it is. And I believe the odds are going to go up and down for all of them. But
Yeah.
there are actually some J.D. Vance would be an excellent vice president. So there are some fantastic candidates in the running. And we do also have to remember that the odds, never mind from Vegas, are that whoever Trump picks as his vice president is also going to be the front runner for the Republican presidential candidacy in 4 years.
Yes, let me ask you about that and about one of the people I like, but given that situation, it may not be the best pick. Kelsey Gifford.
I don't know that she's actually ready.
Compelling story.
Yeah, she's got a compelling story. I think she needs a little more seasoning. So I think she may be ready for a VP slot in 4 years, but I'm not sure she's ready for it now.
I will give you that. But let me get back to the Clampetts, and that is the Biden family. You know, Bo is holier than like him. It's the ring. It's Gandhi, Jesus Christ, and then there's Bo, correct? And anyway, when he after his death, his wife was not only doing Hunter, but enjoying the crack life. Unbelievable. It's called the Clampetts, isn't it?
Yeah, if you take a good look at the behavior of the Biden family, if Joe Biden was not in office, if he was not a career politician, they would have been gathered around the cement pond. These folks would not have gotten anywhere. They have built the entire family fortune around selling access to Joe Biden. These are not geniuses by any stretch of the imagination.
No, morally bankrupt, financially bankrupt, and you were made a exceptionally amazing point. Is when you take away the graft, he's basically because the moron can't live on 200 grand a year.
And
But he's Uncle Joe though. How does it? How come? Wait a second. His whole life has been lunch pail Joe. How come he can't survive on 200 grand? Plus perks, by the way.
Lunch Pail Joe swept things under the carpet. That was the only thing he had to do with a lunch pail was he used that to hide his secrets. Let's not forget that the mainstream media has been covering for Joe Biden. And some of what they've been covering up is abjectly disgusting. And I'm not talking about graft. I'm not even talking about selling access. This has been out there, yes, they've been sweeping it under the carpet, but they always ignore, they won't even bring up Ashley Biden. Mm-hmm. Joe's daughter had her diary stolen. In a court of law, when they prosecuted the people that stole it, she had to authenticate this diary. And in that authenticated diary, it accuses Joe Biden of incest. She wrote in the diary that she would take showers early in the day before he got home so he wouldn't come into the shower with her. Okay, say what you will about Trump. Nobody has accused him of anything that bad.
It was between adults. Yes, that is correct. My view about stuff like that is beyond reprehensible because it's irrevocable damage. If you're an adult and it's between adults, knock yourself out. I could care less. But with children, especially your own children, I got no mercy. We'll just leave it at that. Speaking of no mercy, I don't have a lot of love lost for Bernie the Jew hater, self-hating Jew, I should say. He's now going to boycott the potential address by Netanyahu for both houses of Congress. What a despicable piece of shit.
Yes, for those of
no other way to describe it.
Yeah, for those of you who were not aware, there was a bipartisan invitation to Benjamin Netanyahu to address a rare joint session of Congress. This invitation was issued by all four leaders of the House and Senate, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, representing both parties. And the only people who have made a fuss about this are Bernie and the squad. They are yelling up in arms. Oh my God, Netanyahu is a career, he's a criminal. He's going to be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court. He may very well be. These are the same people that have ignored human rights violations by Russia, China, and Iran. These folks are hardcore anti Semites, and they have been criticized by both the Republicans and the Democrats in past years. It is only the squad that is defending their jurisdiction.
Well, the whole Bernie shtick, I hope, is over. The Bernie, the old uncle, the guy's a miserable son of a bitch, a mean-spirited asshole, and he has no right to be in Congress and no right to be on any Sunday morning talk show. The guy's so despicable. During the Cold War with our mortal enemy, he spent his honeymoon in Russia. In a real country, he should have been deported, the piece of shit. How do you like that?
Yeah, Bernie Sanders has always been a communist. I know he calls himself an independent socialist. He's not a socialist, he's a communist. He's always been a communist. He's always thought the Russian way of life is was the way to go. Of course, that's because he never had to live it. If you ask anybody that's actually lived in a socialist country, in a communist country, they'll tell you horror stories. And this is why the Democrats are losing such traction in the Hispanic community, because so many of them came here to escape socialism, and now the Democrats are trying to enforce socialism.
100% agree. And just like as we said years ago, with Bernie, all the other pieces of shit, it's do as I say, not as I do. He's never been richer than he is now. He never actually worked until he was like 45. The only job he had, you can call it a job, as mayor of whatever Vermont. Then he parlayed that. Before that, he was writing porn articles to what Penthouse magazine. The guy's a real genius. Yes, yes, yes. So we also have the Fauci hearings. Your thoughts? I think that star is pretty much set. Am I not correct?
Yeah,
You tell me, Dr. Lodkin.
Fauci's legacy is done because we are now seeing actual evidence. We've seen emails from Fauci trying to dissuade scientists from talking about the lab leak theory. He wanted that to be, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory, because he was afraid it was going to make it harder for scientists to get funding. Now we're finding out there was no study done about masks. There was no study done about social distancing. There was no evidence that any of this was going to be effective. And yet, we shut down the economy. We kept kids out of school for an extended period of time on his say so. These kids are going to be dealing with the repercussions of that for the rest of
Forever,
their
possibly.
lives.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, we agree 100%. Yes, it's not a short-term thing. It's not like, yes, you had gas lines back in the 70s. No, irreversible damage economically, politically, and educationally. Thank you, Mr. Fauci. Another reprobate. He was a 80-year-old bureaucrat. No one even knew who the guy was, and he had his little moment in the sun, and he couldn't get enough of it. That star has definitely set, and good riddance, goodbye, and I hope there's further action against him. Um, We'll conclude with the world of sports, Dr. Lotkin. The NFL, Roger Goodell, an empty suit, took something that you can just basically smoke cigarettes and, recline in a desk and just let it go in its natural course, you'd be fine. But he's done everything to screw up the NFL. And of course, he had the Black Lives Matter and racism. Okay, I understand the height of the George Floyd, but okay, that's like 4 years ago. Enough is enough, right? And he had LBG. Guess what? NFL teams are now saying, "Nah, I don't think so." Your thoughts?
Yeah, the NFL teams are the ones that have to make these decisions because they're the ones that have to get fans to come out to the stadium to make money.
Hmm.
They're the ones that have to sell their rights to their games, and if nobody wants to watch them, they're not going to make any money. And as we've talked about over and over again with Go Woke, Go Broke, there is a huge financial backlash against these woke tendencies. And the NFL owners surely don't want to take the financial hit that Goodell is setting them up for.
Again, he's one just like we talked about a couple weeks ago, like the Sports Illustrated. I'll call her executive. Probably never worked a day in her life. She literally said when she had Gail King and whatever overweight women that on the swimsuit edition that we don't care the people that leave us. We just want the true believers to follow. You're bankrupt, Jesus. I mean genius. So yeah, that's the kind of people. Roger Goodell sipping Chardonnay in the Hamptons. I'm sure he has no idea what the blue collar fan. He hasn't seen them in years. Um, a sad note, I think, is a sad note. I believe it's a sad note. The new Caitlin, the new phenon from the college rank, is now in the WNBA, and the real lesson is she's gotten a lot of blowback, both verbally and physically, and kind of a lot of crickets going on. But the real lesson for our kiddies out there is that if you're white, racism against you is fine. If you're black, my God, you're lucky if you don't go to jail. Am I not correct? And
Yeah,
jail's an option.
yeah. What Caitlin Clark has done in just the few short weeks she's been in the WNBA is to raise the ratings of the games, raise attendance at the games, and she's actually creating an environment that the teams themselves are able to spend extra money on things like travel to the games. So now they're flying to games instead of on a rickety bus. That her star has risen and it brought the entire WNBA with it.
Yes, it
And
did.
except for the fact that she is white and they can't handle that. So it
And
is
heterosexual.
right.
And heterosexual.
And
That is a fact.
it is not acceptable to be a white heterosexual nowadays.
No way.
So you have excessive fouls against her. There have been some
Blatant.
incredibly nasty comments made about her because why should somebody who did not bring any ill will to any player and is helping the game tremendously, there isn't another reason other well she's not one of us so we're going to do her in. It's like, really, it's time to grow up.
Yeah, but this is an outgrowth. Just like on the college campuses, guess what, Dr. Frankenstein? The monster has come home. And after all the indoctrinations about how white people hate you, you never get a fair shake, blah, 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 it's become institutionalized.
Yeah,
And this is the outgrowth. It
uh,
just didn't happen. It wasn't spontaneous. Sorry.
no, and we're seeing a lot of this in the past several weeks. We saw a gay pride parade interrupted by pro Hamas protesters because, despite the fact that the whole LGBTQ community seemed to have been fighting for the Palestinians. Well, that's not good
Hmm.
enough. So they are turning on themselves. And, we've talked a lot about DEI. We've talked a lot about how this is tearing things apart. I've decided I think I want to push a DEI initiative because when you take a look at professional sports, the Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, there's a distinct lack of representation of older white Jewish men playing in these
A hundred
games.
percent, yes.
I think we
Yes.
need to be represented.
100%. I'll sign on to that. And you know something? It's a joke, but it's not a joke because That's really the output of all this, okay? It just shows you what's going. Look at the Ivy Leagues. Victor Hansen said it 50 years ago. They could talk about the Pythagorean theorem, they could talk about Newton's law. Now they can talk about Palestinians being persecuted. My, have we fallen. There you go.
Yes, we've and
On a
you
hundred
know
thousand a year.
if we don't stop the descent, it will at some point become irreversible. And if that happens, we as a nation are in deep, deep trouble. Because
We're already in deep trouble.
if we can't no, but we can still reverse the trend. If it gets to the point where that's no longer possible, we're done. Industry will leave, jobs will fall to the wayside.
No
you
question.
you think that the wealth divide is large now? If this keeps going, you're going to see the top 1% will be fine, but the bottom 99% will be in poverty. Never mind living paycheck to paycheck. They won't be able to make it paycheck to paycheck.
Well said. Well, Dr. Lopkin, another great show. Well, actually, before you leave, isn't that really indicative about the whole progressive movement? In theory, everything looks great, but yeah, life is not theoretical. You can't wake up in the morning, Dr. Lopkin said, yeah, I closed 3 accounts and I did a great job in that strategic planning. You actually have to do it, and that's where the divide is, isn't it?
Yes,
Everything's great on paper.
the divide is in implementation. In theory, theory and practice are the same thing. In practice, they aren't.
Well said. Well, another edition of Carnivore Bites. Our listeners can give input into our show, can't they?
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. Contact us there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can listen to every episode at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Always a pleasure. See you next week.
We'll see you then.